Hi friends, welcome to the Wild Side. I'm Steve Hall. Looking out over a cemetery can inspire some deep emotions. We may be grieving a lost loved one or having discomforting thoughts about our own mortality. But beneath every tombstone is a story. The cemetery we are about to visit is a place we can go hiking, boating, or fishing on a magnificent waterway while we appreciate the natural surroundings of a state park. While we are there, we may want to reflect on these microcosms of history known as cemeteries, which can easily be lost or forgotten. A trail surrounding an old cemetery alongside the river gives Rachel Wells a place to ponder the past. She travels here from her home in southern Indiana to appreciate her Tennessee roots.
It's where I come for peace and serenity. I go down on the riverfront or I walk around the trails and I just reflect on what life might have been like for the people that were here living.
And now she is able to meditate beside grave markers of two World War I veterans who provide a more personal connection to her ancestry.
George is a first cousin to my dad, and Andrew is his nephew. Andrew and George are uncle and nephew. My great-grandfather is actually, who I discovered is buried up there as well. I discovered that last night, but he's in an unmarked grave. So of course I'm gonna make that effort to discover where exactly his grave is.
The old African-American cemetery is on a hillside of Johnsonville State Historic Park on the banks of the Tennessee River. Civil War history remains alive here with reenactments, protected land, and educational displays. The old cemetery was established after the war, long before development of the park, but had disappeared beneath layers of time.
It was just completely overgrown in vines and fallen trees and limbs and everything like that, and it just struck me that the cemetery was in very, very poor condition. And with the mission of Tennessee State Parks is boiled down to three words: preserve, protect, and share.
So a plan of action included extensive cleanup, with Friends of the Park bringing together teams of volunteers that included Rachel Wells. Some of the graves now have markers. Others are temporarily marked with little orange flags.
Based on the research that we've done and some maps we've obtained from the Tennessee Valley Authority, we know that there are at least 100 persons buried in that cemetery. It was interesting in the research because we knew that there was a church there, and I didn't know a lot on the cemetery. I just thought that everyone in the cemetery was from that church. So along the way, we learned that some of the persons buried on the hillside were associated with that church. Other persons were reinterred, that they were buried at what is now the Chemours plant, the TVA plant here in New Johnsonville, and whenever those plants were constructed, those graves were reinterred somewhere, and for whatever reason, they decided to add them to the existing graves that are in now Johnsonville State Historic Park. We also know that two of the graves that are in the cemetery belong to African-American veterans from World War I.
It was the recognition of those two veterans, relatives of Rachel Wells, that brought her to participate in a public dedication of the cemetery.
I discovered last night that my paternal grandfather is one of the unmarked graves in this cemetery. It is my goal to, as much as I can with the help of everyone, to identify as many of the people here as we can. And I'm proud to be a descendant of the Wells family that made their home here in Johnsonville.
I've seen some of these cemeteries in other parts of the state where they have crosses and the markers say, known but unto God. Here we're going to know, at least we know for sure, over half of them we're going to know who they are. And so their descendants are going to be able to come here, and there are going to be stories about each of their lives.
Some of those stories date back to the Civil War, when more than 20,000 African Americans served the Union Army in Tennessee.
Two of those regiments, the 12th United States Colored Troops and the 13th United States Colored Troops, were stationed down here at Johnsonville. There's a picture where you see the artillery pieces. You see them loading the Northwestern Railroad in November 1864 to prepare for the Battle of Nashville. That was the beginning of the history for these men on this hill.
It's hard for me to imagine pallbearers carrying somebody up this hillside here, but it was done.
time went by as it always does, and things change.
1890 to about 1970, we had the Northern Black Migration, and that is African Americans were leaving the South, including Tennessee, and going north to find jobs, industrial jobs.
Leaving many cemeteries behind and nearly forgotten. But this one will now be remembered.
And at last, these unknown souls will have found a final resting place.
For those who are known, their story can be better shared with the next generation.
We discover something sometimes in parks that we didn't even know was there, and so it provides us an opportunity to highlight yet another facet, and maybe a facet that never would have been discovered and never known if the park system was not there.
Overjoyed, overwhelming, honored to know that my great-great-grandfather came here and was involved in the Civil War and chose to stay here after his service ended and built his roots here and his family. And I'm a descendant of that, you know, born in Waverly, and my parents lived in Johnsonville, what is now New Johnsonville. My grandmother lived over the hill there behind the Welcome Center, what is now Wells Loop. Just honored to have a history. Johnsonville is close to my heart.
Our website, wildsidetv.com, will guide you to more information about the intriguing history maintained on the grounds of Johnsonville State Historic Park. The park manager is hoping the dedication ceremony will spark memories in people that might lead to the discovery of documents, pictures, or even information in old Bibles that can help tell a more complete story of the people buried there.